So the next thing I'd like you to get involved with is a text rendering experience. Norman Webb developed this DOK classification scheme, and he wrote this document that you'll find on page 6 in your materials packet in March of 2002. And he created certain levels based on different subject areas. So what you're going to find in there is there's a section for reading, writing, mathematics, social studies, and science. What I'd like you to do right now is find the section of text that most closely relates to the subject that you teach. Then I'd like you to decide among the group members that you're sitting with who is going to read each DOK level. I'd only like you to read one of them. So find the section of text that's most closely related to what you teach, and then decide on the DOK level you're going to read. Once you've done that, read the text, and I want you to underline one sentence from your section of text that you found to be particularly significant. After you've done that, you're going to bracket a phrase within that sentence that you underlined. Bracket the one phrase that you found particularly significant. And then finally, I'd like you to circle one word in the entire sentence that you selected that you find to be the most significant related to that depth of knowledge level. You may begin. We're now providing a reason for something. So you had things probably like analysis or justification or reason. In level 4, it's extended thinking. So this is where you're really getting into the synthesis of multiple areas of text or concepts. So let's take a look at each of these levels in a little bit more detail. Depth of knowledge level 1. Memorizing is still memorizing, easy or difficult. I think of the password that I have to constantly change for the district. I can never remember it because I have to change it so often that when I get it on the first time, I'm so excited. But honestly, it's still memorizing, whether I'm memorizing that or my ATM card PIN, the PIN number for my card. Either way, that's memorizing. And Ken Jennings was great at memorizing information. He was a champion Jeopardy player who memorized a lot of information. But regardless, every single question that he answered, he was just recalling something he already knew. And if we were to take a look at some of the pieces to this, when you think about a depth of knowledge level 1 task, what is the task asking of you? It's asking you to recall or reproduce knowledge. And the objective is to recall the correct answer, whatever the correct answer it is, and you know it or you don't. There's no figuring, there's no solving to be done. The knowledge to answer that question is the answer, if that makes really any sense. Well, if you take a look at an example, describe the information contained in graphics or data tables in the text. That would be an example of a depth of knowledge 1 task. If we were to take a look at the role of a student versus the role of a teacher when faced with a depth of knowledge level 1 task, the student is doing things like recognizing, recalling, responding, remembering. They're following directions at this point. And you, as the teacher, your job with the depth of knowledge level 1 task is really to question the student, to focus their attention or to direct them. You're showing, you're telling, you're demonstrating, you're providing examples, you're breaking things down for the students. But really, you're doing a really big bulk of the work here with a depth of knowledge level 1 task. Now let's take a look at a depth of knowledge level 2 task. This is that skills and concepts place, right? So this is now requiring a student to create a relationship between pieces of information. You are actually going to act on the information that you've learned in some sort of way. So now you have all of this knowledge, and you're going to use that knowledge along with skills you've developed to do something with that knowledge. So, for example, describe how the 2 graphs or data tables are alike and different. That would be an example of a level 2 task. So you're taking one piece of information and you're applying it to another, which makes it beyond a recall or reproduction task. And if we were to take a look at the role of the student versus the role of the teacher, the student at this point is solving routine problems or tasks involving multiple decision points and concepts. They're constructing a model maybe to show relationships. They're demonstrating, this is probably one of my favorites, they're demonstrating the use of their knowledge. This is now where they're showing you that they can use knowledge that they've gained. They're compiling, they're organizing, they're illustrating with examples. They're making predictions at this point. Now you as the teacher, you're going to question them, but now your questions are to differentiate, to infer, to check for conceptual understanding. You're going to explore possible options and connections with them. And you're going to provide some additional examples and non-examples. So taking a look at a level 3 task, DOK 3, this is where we get into strategic thinking and reasoning. And to be honest with you, the answer key at this point has to go out the window. Why? Because it's all about my reason. I have my reason for why I think that this is the best answer, solution, way to approach this problem. So the tasks are requiring the students at this point to take this conceptual knowledge and integrate it with multiple skills to reach some sort of solution or produce some sort of product. Now, what's the objective? To state one's reasoning and provide relevant supporting evidence. So I have to have a reason, but I have to have evidence to go along with it. And a great example task would be something like, describe the data or text evidence that supports your solution, reasoning, or conclusions. So if we were to take a look at the role of a student versus the role of a teacher, in a depth of knowledge level 3 task, a student would be uncovering and selecting relevant and credible supporting evidence. They're debating, they're making claims, they're making judgments, they're initiating questions at this point. They're planning. They're testing their ideas and their solutions, and they're making applications at this point to the real world. Now, the teacher, you're going to question the students, but you're going to question to probe for their reasoning. What's that underlying thinking that they haven't shared with you yet? You're going to ask more open-ended questions. Your role is really going to shift into the role of a resource or a coach. You're going to encourage, and this is huge, you're going to encourage multiple approaches and solutions. This is not a my way or the highway thing. This is, wow, that's a great idea. I didn't think to approach it that way. So this is really where you're going to provide criteria for them. You might give them some examples for making a judgment. But ultimately, the kids are going to go ahead and they're going to initiate the questions. They're going to make the claim. They may even argue with you a bit or dispute with you, and that's okay. This is where debates come into play. And you, as a teacher, have to determine when and where the depth and exploration is most appropriate at this point. Now, looking at a level 4 task, this is where we're getting into extended thinking. And I'd say allow me to investigate this further, because this is now where a task is going to require a kid to coordinate all of this knowledge and skills from multiple areas to carry out some sort of solution or process. Now, what's the objective? Engage in conducting investigations of complex real-world problems or unpredictable outcomes. So often, I can say as a science educator, we think that if we engage kids in a lab activity, that we're automatically in a level 3 or 4 task. But the reality of the situation is if they're just following directions and there is no inquiry where they are given the task of finding some sort of solution and developing it on their own, you're not at the level that you think you are. So if you take a look at the example here, describe varying perspectives on global climate change using supporting scientific evidence and identify the most significant effects it might have on the planet in 100 years. This is an extended research activity. This is not something that's going to be completed in 15 minutes in class. So if we were to take a look at what the student's doing versus what the teacher is doing, the student is designing, they're taking risks, they're synthesizing multiple resources, they're collaborating, planning, organizing, and modifying, and they're creating some sort of concrete, tangible product. Now, you as the teacher, your role has shifted significantly, and you have a lot less to do here. Your job is now really to question, to extend their thinking, broaden their perspective, and facilitate the collaboration and self-evaluation. And that's ultimately it. So you can see how going through these 4 levels, 4 depth of knowledge levels, you can see how not only do the tasks change and they significantly get more complex, but the students and the teachers' roles shift as well.